On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
In this episode of Life Science Success, we're interviewing Patrick Moran. He's an attorney and an entrepreneur who transitioned from industrial, agriculture, and healthcare to life sciences with his groundbreaking work at Pebble Life Sciences. So with that, welcome, Patrick, to the show. Great to
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's good to be here, Don. Thank you.
Yes. Would you mind just telling everybody just a little bit about yourself and kind of what led you to your current role at Pebble?
So I was born and raised in Texas, backpacked around the world and earned a philosophy degree from age 18 to 25. Hey, let me tell you real quick, Dawn. Because I get excited about the topic you want to talk about. And so I am probably going to be looking down periodically to have notes to keep myself on track. So just bear with me if I'm looking down, I'm not looking away. So went to law school in DC, fell back on my degree during the Great Recession. I transitioned into natural products out of executing or practicing law in Texas as an accredited investor and an entrepreneur and pioneer in 2014 as the first mover of the Texas cannabis industry. So back when it was tabula rasa, we planted a flag and said that we knew that there was valid medicine to be made, and we made a commitment to do that. And so that's what got me going on this path. We developed two plays. We established a holding company and developed two plays. One was natural products at pharmaceutical grade, and the second was true industrial hemp, zero THC, no consumables, purely for textiles. And we got way ahead of the genetics on the industrial side and have kind of been waiting for the market to catch up to our work for several years. And then the natural products continue to evolve, and we have grown into a life science company. So.
Very good. And I guess when you think about that transition, could you sort of see your world like leading towards wanting to be in the drug industry, or is this something that just more or less naturally happened and you say, hey, look, this is like the next natural step for you?
We have continued to do it's like the puppy that shows up on your doorstep. We have continued to we were handed the mission and we have continued to execute on it, and we have done the next natural step. For us, you can track back through every business plan pitch from 2014, and from that first statement to today, we followed the natural next step. So, yeah. It was not a goal to go into life science. So, yeah.
And then how did your family background in industrial agriculture and healthcare influence your career choices and interests?
So the family background on my father's side, we came over on the boat from Ireland 6 generations ago, and still run the same farm that my great-grandfather purchased the first 40 acres for in the late 1800s in Iowa. And so we have seen that. It's an ingrained part of who we are. Working with plants, working with genetics was something that I understood without needing or wanting to understand it. On my mother's side, she was the highest person of accomplishment in multiple generations of her side of the family as a nurse. And then she wrote that and became quite a brilliant nurse. She was born in the 1925, so very difficult years for a female professional. And I grew up in a small town in Texas with us not going anywhere without somebody stopping Nobby, my mom, and thanking her for what she had done for them or a family member or whatever. And so, I understand the intersection between the two worlds, agricultural and healthcare. I understand the internal processes to some extent. and I'm able to kind of figure out or piece things together. I guess I know what questions to ask, and I, to some extent, can speak both languages. And so, yeah, so I guess a bit of a
Uh,
bridge filter.
Ultimately, very, very important, I'm sure, especially given the role that you play. Um, when what prompted your pivot to life sciences in 2019, and how did the results from Pebble's first prototype impact those decisions?
So, first prototype was taking hemp, non-psychotropic hemp, was legalized through the 2018 Farm Bill, and that was our green light. We had in 2019, Texas followed suit, and it was go. And so for us, we started developing prototypes, specifically non-psychoactive, unscheduled cannabinoids and terpenes, and created a prototype to try and outperform Epidiolex, which was the only cannabinoid-based medication in development at that time, and they were coming to the end of their phase threes for Dravet syndrome. And so I put together a theory and thought we could outperform that in by combining and tracking synergy. And our very first prototype, we built an internal case study infrastructure that could be validated by third parties, and we did a 7 severely autistic children, multiple diagnosed children, but they all had to have ASD, and then several also had epilepsy, PDD, pandas, and so multi-diagnosed children ages 5 to 12. And we did 7 of those kids as a one immediate case study, and every one of them had a benefit. 2 of them were profound, nonverbal to age 7, spoke their first words on our first prototype. Another child had never been able to have a haircut without being strapped down. They were able to do that. So a huge reduction in generalized anxiety. There seemed to be a level of either neurogenesis or just simple ability to process, seizure reduction in several. And so it really opened our eyes to the possibility. And so for us, it wasn't a pivot. To the rest of the world, it looked like a pivot because that's not the direction that cannabis was going as a nascent industry. And so we knew that we had something that we could develop into a platform. And so our next logical step was to start partnering with serious, focused researchers who could do that. And we ended up with MD Anderson, and been with them since 2020. So,
Nice. And along the way, I'm sure that you know learned a lot overall in your journey. I like to highlight these because I feel like things that you learn or things that are major milestones for you in your career probably are also things that other people will see as well. And so, can you pick out just a few of the items that you really felt like were major lessons learned in your career, for any sort of milestones that you've crossed?
whew, I thought about that question a little different. I think faith in self, faith in team, faith in the greater mission, um, uh, perseverance. Just my God. The it truly the anecdotes that it's not necessarily the smartest, it's not necessarily the fastest or the most aggressive, but showing up regardless is cannot be understated, and I continue to be challenged with that, and or have that placed in front of me. I think those are the fundamental ones. If I started breaking down individual experiences, we could eat up the whole hour with it, but I think those are two we can sort of build on, but that are fundamental to our ongoing survival. So yeah.
Yeah. And I I really have to echo that because I do feel like there's a part of it's just natural in everyday life where it's like, look, you just have to keep showing up. And like not it doesn't necessarily mean doing the same thing every day showing up, but showing
Uh,
up and like continuing to evolve yourself, continuing to evolve your thinking and making sure that at the end of the day that like you're like trying to extend whatever it is, even further. And whether it's formal education or it's, a job, to me, it's like it's the same sort of thing you have to do in life.
I think you really hit it, Don. It's the evolution, and there's kind of a daily list of like these are your opportunities, and you can, the term these days is quiet quit, and I don't know but I've seen it and I've made the mistake in my own way. But you're like, well, I'm here, I'm doing my work, but I'm not going to do that today. And that's the thing that really would cause you to evolve and to move the company forward and to move it. And so it's a self honesty to allow that list to be there, and then it's executing that list, whether you want to execute that list or not. And that's what triggers that ongoing evolution, and doing that on a day-to-day basis, so you don't end up off track here, and then when the thing collapses, you go, well, it was meant to collapse. No, it wasn't. You got 6 steps back there that you could have been doing, and you can see that. So yeah. Well said. Yeah.
Absolutely. And how did your experience, as a CEO in natural product R&D genetics development help to prepare you for what you're doing now?
Well, on the genetic side, it helped us get an understanding of control of the plant without outside human interaction, right? So we got a basis of understanding of the potential that natural products have, because we've moved well beyond, we're in other botanicals and synergistic combinations now that are exponents of efficacy from anything that we could do individually from. Yeah. And so we got that basis of understanding early on with just the natural product R&D, working with genetics in a natural way, but accelerating that process. Understanding that the efficacy and what was holding back developing these, because some of the agents we're working with have been recognized in Eastern countries for decades. NCI has been reporting on their potential. One of them that is one of our key agents NCI has been reporting on for 30 years. And so diving in and having that basis allowed me to see that it wasn't a shortcoming in the agent. It wasn't a shortcoming in the API. It was how it was being addressed in our human shortcomings. And so how to approach that from a scientific perspective, that there's no lack of efficacy in the botanicals, it's how they're being approached. And how and that goes into perseverance, focus, and allowed us to really tune that in. So that's what the background gave me, and we built on that. So
Yeah, I think I've said this in other podcasts as well. I feel like having an understanding also helps you sort of see both the roadblocks as well as the bridges that could get you to the other side, right? So it's almost like something that's needed. And I've used this example as well in other episodes where I said, look, I've been a part of organizations where you show up and the R&D teams like, oh my gosh, sky's falling, we got bad data, and we don't know how we're going to be able to move forward. And I feel like what's interesting to me is whenever there are just brilliant people that are just like, they can see the picture a little differently, and they're just like, well, okay, so yes, head on, we understand that this problem is probably something that is going to be difficult to overcome. What if we took a slight redirect this way? Is this the way through? And all of a sudden, also I've seen teams kind of come together. It's normally the biostatisticians plus the people that understand the science that kind of go, hey, look, here's how we could see that other path, maybe then allowing us to move forward again. And so it's amazing to me how something may look impossible, you get the right brilliant people in the room, all of a sudden you find a path forward.
Well, I agree. And I think that like for us, there was a built-in humility because we knew we didn't know what we were doing. So there was no formal training, right? We bubble wrapped ourselves in high quality life science executives and advisors and scientists, but we came in as outsiders. And we came in already holding this, that had this history of documented potential, but not executing. So for us, it, like you said, it's just taking the next right step. And knowing that we were out of the box. So we haven't been scared to ask questions. We haven't been scared to, approach things from a different angle, because we were coming in from a different angle anyway. And so it's been interesting because we get reaffirmed of a lot of things of, whoa, this is what that we were critical of when we were outside of the box, that we understand now why they're done a certain way, right? FDA regulatory pathway and et cetera, right? The details that you could get lost in with that. But and then there also, but it's also provided reaffirmation of that we're bringing something. It finally got pointed out to us that at its full potential, we're developing a new modality. We're where immunotherapy was 15 years ago, right? And so to accept and embrace to a certain extent, while finding our proper place. And I think it allows that out of the box thinking to help build and improve the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also true. So let's talk a little bit about Pebble. What is Pebble's mission, and how does your company aim to make a difference in the lives of autistic children?
All right, so I'm gonna read this straight from, so I don't get lost in conversation. The mission is to commercialize our novel platform to establish a new treatment modality of oncologic and neurologic therapies that improve overall survival and increase patient quality of life. Specific to autistic children, and I talked about this a little bit with the case studies, and we've had progressive case studies all the way through. Facilitate independence, big deal for autistic kids and their family, and personal growth by significantly reducing generalized anxiety, stimming, seizure activity when it's applicable, and facilitating neurogenesis. This allows them to adapt, change quicker, easier. We have a lot of testimony about that, and making the entire family's lives better.
Very good. And I guess if if people were interested in Pebble as well, can you talk a little bit more about where the company currently is and its overall growth and approach to getting to the market?
Yeah, so we completed those oncology studies. I developed a hypothesis. We were studying GW Pharma. We were studying Epidiolex, that and the data behind it, looking at all the anecdotal data around cannabinoids and terpenes, and I put together a hypothesis that the indications were based from solid tumor cancer, from cancer treatment across to neurological disorders. Inflammation is a shared indicator. And so if you could isolate, if you could take natural botanical isolates that had anti-inflammatory properties and hit them at the right ratios and combinations, you could not only affect neurological disorders, which we outperformed that, but Epidiolex in those early case studies. Most of those kids had tried and failed at Epidiolex is CBD isolate. So most of those kids had tried and failed at that. And so we were able to demonstrate, at least on a case study basis, outperformance there. And so if we could do that to a great enough extent based on anti-inflammatory principles, eventually you would start affecting the standard of care, not in, well, also in cancer palliative, but ultimately in actually treating cancer and killing solid tumor cancer. And so that's what we did. And so we were able to develop parallel through the discovery process. We laid out a platform and ended up with both fungal extracts and select hemp-based cannabinoids and terpenes. And from that, we went through a whole discovery phase, 2-3 years. It depends on where you draw the line, but we a whole discovery phase that was simultaneous, doing progressive case studies along that spectrum from neurological PTSD, autism, fibromyalgia, palliative cancer care in sync with chemo, and then ultimately killing cancer, solid tumors, and running progressive studies so that our drug prototypes were sufficient for both. And then we hit a crossroads where these pathways differ fundamentally when you start getting on an FDA pathway or a true preclinical pathway. And so we had to decide whether or not we were going to develop a lead optimized drug candidate for the FDA down the cancer pathway or down the neurological. And the ultimate strategic decision was cancer because our data there continues to serve neuro because of details within the platform, but not in reverse. So all the data that we continue to gain still has a direct or indirect benefit to our neurological part of the platform and indications, but that wouldn't happen if we followed in reverse. And so we got a lot of really strong hits, especially when we started combining isolates from different botanicals that added up to a lot of different solid tumor cancers and even some hits in leukemia and hematologic. And so as we've continued to develop, we always hold on to that neurological history because at full breadth, we want to see that platform developed throughout licensing our own efforts. But all the energy has gone into developing a relationship with the National Cancer Institute, identifying specific cancers that are specific. We now have 3 MVPs that are kind of rolling out simultaneous, 2 single agents, and then the combined synergy of them into one combination drug. And so that's all hyper-focused on specific indications within treating solid tumor cancer.
Very good. And how do you see Pebble's work in natural products and genetics contributing to the broader advancements in life sciences?
I'm going to answer in macro, and then if you want to talk more, I'm glad to. But I think that at full breath, into the benefit of the greater life science mission potential, I think we are a demonstration of the best of Eastern and Western medicine combined. I think that we are the best of natural products and pharmaceutical potential combined, applying pharmaceutical FDA standards to isolates, right? NCI has been priming this kind of work for a long, long time. And so its time has kind of come. I think that we can help demonstrate the best of, it depends on how you look at things, but taking the plants that God gave us dominion over to concretely improve existential living human existence, right? Like with our autistic parents, if you go from counting seizures per day to counting them per month, then those drops under your child's tongue are literally a miracle. If you go from a CA125 and treatment-resistant ovarian cancer, and it's going up by a full exponent every 2 weeks, and you start taking a capsule that flattens that growth and then reverses it in 20 days, that's a literal miracle. And so you are seeing that in life science today, and we are part of it. So
amazing. And what are some of the most innovative projects or technology that Pebble's developing? What kind of potential do they have overall in terms of impact?
it's the 3 MVPs. So the single agent, the single agent small molecule, the single agent novel protein, the combination of the two, the combination that each one of those has its own. We've been able to develop monotherapy potential based on very specific targeted recurrent cancers. Combined, they create kind of a super drug that has exponential synergy without any introduced toxicity that we've determined so far. There are more tests to be done, so I need to qualify that. But there is a high unmet need, right? I'm gonna read again just to stay on track and get the message across. Current cancer drug resistant strategies focus on incremental improvements to existing therapies rather than novel mechanisms of action, right? We have a modality potential. All 3 of the MVPs can be combined with existing modalities. So in addition to the monotherapy, we've run testing for chemotherapy, including PARP inhibitors, radiotherapy, targeted therapy, immune therapy, pre and post surgery. So external publications, our internal work, all of this has been well documented. And so overcoming that drug resistance remains the leading cause of cancer recurrence and treatment failure. So the overall market opportunity exceeds 100 billion if you take the full. We're not pretending like that's what we're approaching. We're saying that's the overall TAM, and there's a significant part of that can be addressed by a new modality that focuses on these natural product isolates that have all of this potential, like what people were poo-pooing with immunotherapy 15 years ago, right? Immunotherapy has become this miracle that is in 40% of all cancer treatments, but even it has its limitations in solid tumors and toxicities and et cetera. And so there are gaps to fill still, and this is the potential to fill major recognized gaps that we all see. So,
Very good. And what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing currently, and how do you overcome them?
everything is chicken and egg. Progress is completely nonlinear. Uh, so the way we overcome that is we focus on long-term things that are worth more than immediate money, so that we can add exponential value. We keep filling the next obvious gap or puzzle piece as it comes together, and then we, go look for the okay. So here's what the puzzle looks like now. Well, that's the obvious next one to go do, and there's always a little more light. You get to the end of the path, you got no idea where to, it doesn't seem like you have any idea where to go, and then you actually take that step, and the light goes on to go. Okay, you go this way. So for us, that's been very loyal, very effective talent that has made up the team. We've bubble wrapped ourselves in collaborative partners who have had more experience with this. We bring the natural product expertise. They bring the life science execution, drug development expertise. We've developed in-house systems to solve problems that would either be too expensive in money or time to outsource. So if we can't bring in talent, then we have been very good at developing an internal system like that case study, third-party validated case study system that we developed. So that's how we
Yeah.
that's what the challenges are, and that's how we try to address them or work to address them. So
The one point that I took from you early on is that progress is not linear, which I think is the statement of the year, given just all the headwinds that everybody faces naturally in terms of capital raise and also just challenges naturally in developing any sort of drug as well, right? I mean, you're trying to counter a lot of different things, and so I think I think that's an important thing to take away for anybody that's listening to the interview as well.
thank you. Glad.
And let me ask a couple of questions about you. So, what's the greatest piece of leadership advice you've ever received?
Frugality is an art that should be cultivated. So we have survived, I don't know, in the last 11 years, 99% die-off rate. And we do that because there's a culture that was indoctrinated partly from my family to Depression era parents, certainly from the people who've come into the team and done it. But we are artists at making a dollar spend like 10. And if I look at who gave me that advice, I don't know that any immediate mentor did, other than people that we execute with and are on our team. But you can look at speeches from Peter Thiel, Charlie Munger, Buffett, family office clubs, which we have a lot of really positive engagement with, talk about G1s. And I remember being at a Richard Wilson's family office club event, and then talking about G1s, first generations, the ones that that establish the family to have a reason for a family office, and the multi-generational wealth. The G1s are the rinsing and drying out their Ziploc bags. Right, I used to carry shame about rinsing my Ziploc bags, and I literally heard that from a talk, and I'm like, never again. Now it's a point of pride. So it's not the only thing. You have to. I think it's an expression of gratitude. What the greatest thing you can do with what you've been blessed with is to turn it into more value that serves others. And so there is an art to that. And so that's the art we practice. And it starts with frugality. And then it's, of course, about strategic application of what money you do spend to build value. So, but it's been both a survival and a growth tool for us.
Such an important thing. I'd never heard the term G1 before, but now I know. And
Yeah.
yeah, important as well,
Interesting archetypes. Yeah.
for sure. Patrick, what inspires you?
My daughter. So the faith, clarity, and confidence of an untraumatized child. So who actually completely coincidentally just walked in the door from school. So yeah. So that's it. That's the answer.
Thank you. What concerns you?
I'm going to quote the Who, that we don't get fooled again. So, there's a real squeeze on early stage funding that's been happening the last few years. We have been consciously or unconsciously grifted in the past. It is a moral hit, it is a financial hit. We are not the only ones. We start telling our story and you talk to founders, it's become a really difficult environment. And there are predators. And so, there are VCs that are holding, I'm reading the news that, not news, but like hyper-focused life science, you know, facts-based news. And for years, the last 3 or 4 years, you have the VC class uh, um, with proper pride talking about the billions of dry powder that they're holding for Series A. And those goalposts have continued to shift to later and later stages over the last couple of years, while the federal government's been carrying the full innovation burden in large part through university subsidies. Universities have been taking advantage of that system that's in place. They're using entrepreneurs as revenue sources. We've had that experience where we had studies that were designed and hard sold to us by significant uh, universities that turned out to not be in the company's best interest, and we had to pull out of. Massive indirect costs, right? 60, 70% added for costs that have nothing to do with our study or executing it or anything else. And then having their own funds that are supposed to be set aside for growing new innovation. And they're setting those standards at the same that the VCs are. They're competing with the VCs. I'm not taking a pity party. What I'm saying is now Trump is setting limits on federal participation, or trying to, wherever it lands. But both sides are pointing fingers at each other. The VCs are saying, hey, if you count the universities, who's going to do that? Meanwhile, they've been bragging for years that they've got billions in dry powder. Entrepreneurs are navigating the worst funding climate in decades, and the universities aren't hurting a bit. And so the entrepreneurs are getting squeezed in between. And in the meantime, it's become hyper competitive and we're all out looking. And so you have to trust somebody. And you have guys out there who were valid raisers in the past, right? You can do due diligence and see that, oh my gosh, so and so raised for them in 2018, but they may not have closed the deal since 2020. But they're still out there making a six-figure living, running 10 or 12 entrepreneurs a month through their angel investor network and charging $1,500 a pop. So we've had those. We've had principal investigators who didn't act with integrity. And so, we're really on kind of high alert to both be able to trust, because we have to, but to not get taken again, and to find those partners that we're going to be able to execute with and build this out. So
Yeah, it's a very valid concern, right? And it's funny because I had a call earlier this week with with an investment banker who's just saying, hey, look, I'm looking at different strategies to try and support companies in our space now. And look, I think at the end of the day, is legitimate individuals help the other companies, but at the same time, it's one of those things where just looking at a resume or whatever, it's not as easy to see, whereas this person helped, what is their actual ability, and is it something that they can see, the end of the tunnel maybe in a different way than, most of us can, right? So then get us to fundraising sooner. And so, yeah, I think that's a very valid point that you're making.
thank you. We're good.
Last question. What excites you?
I mean, it's the whole thing. The possibility of bringing a life-saving, game-changing new modality to the market. So all that entails, from the personal to going through life and knowing that you're improving and being a walking angel to the greatest extent that any of us can. Like that's what you wake up and work for. So, yep.
Well, Patrick Moran, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success podcast. I greatly appreciate you being here, for telling me, all about Pebble and everything that you're currently working on. I definitely look forward to seeing the impact that this will have on patients that have cancer as well as autism in the future.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate you having me, man. It was nice to get to connect with you. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Same here.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.